We are in California this hour, where we're standing by for the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office to announce their decision about whether to allow the Menendez brothers to be resentenced.
Erik and Lyle Menendez are currently serving life in prison without the possibility of parole sentences for killing their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. They were convicted in 1996 after a second trial.
Now, during that trial, the brothers claimed that they were sexually abused by their father, and now a recently uncovered letter from Erik to his cousin in the months before the murders appears to support that claim.
That's right. Now, I also just want to mention the first trial, all of that evidence came in. In the second trial, it did not, and they were convicted in that second trial. This decision also comes in the wake of the newly released Netflix documentary about the brothers, which has renewed public interest in the case.
All right, before we bring in our guest, here's more on the Menendez brothers' trial and their recent efforts for an appeal.
I ran around and shot my mom.
Where did you shoot her?
I just reached over and I shot her close.
I was just firing as I went into the room. I just started firing.
In what direction?
In front of me.
What was in front of you?
My parents.
Lyle and Erik Menendez, the Beverly Hills brothers who were sentenced to life in prison for the 1989 murders of their parents, Kitty and Jose, are asking the Los Angeles County Superior Court to review new evidence discovered in their case. The brothers, who are both now in their early 50s, have never denied that they killed their parents. But they say they did it because they were acting in self-defense after years of sexual and physical abuse. During their first trial in 1993, Erik and Lyle Menendez took the stand and described the abuse they say they endured at the hands of their father.
Did you love your mom and dad?
Yes.
And on August 20th, 1989, did you and your brother kill your mother and father?
Yes.
What do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling Lyle that,
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
my dad had been molesting me.
Why did you kill your parents?
Because we were afraid.
Jurors also heard from Andy Cano, a cousin of the brothers, who testified that Erik Menendez swore him to secrecy and asked him if his dad ever gave him massages.
He was actually trying to find out if any of these massages were normal.
What did he say about where the massages were?
Well, he told me his father was massaging his.
He used that word?
Yes, he did.
The 1993 trial ended in a mistrial, with the jurors deadlocked and unable to come to a verdict.
The court finds that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked and declares a mistrial in this matter.
But 2 years later, they were back in court, and this time, Erik and Lyle Menendez were convicted. Now there is a renewed effort to possibly overturn their convictions or get the brothers a new trial. Attorney Mark Garagos has filed a writ of habeas corpus obtained by Court TV that details evidence that he says has never been presented before a jury. The first item is a letter written to Andy Cano from Erik Menendez about 8 months before the murders. The letter was found in Cano's papers after his death. Erik writes that Lyle wasn't going to be home for Christmas, and he was at the house alone and was trying to avoid his father. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He's so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. The letter continues. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. The second item Garagos points to in the habeas motion is a newly disclosed allegation that Jose Menendez molested a member of the boy band Menudo back in the early 80s. Jose Menendez was an executive with RCA Records, and he knew the band's manager, Edgardo Diaz. Roy Rosello was 14 years old when he joined Menudo. According to his sworn statement, he was in New York with the band when Edgar Diaz asked him to go with him to the New Jersey home of Jose Menendez. Rosello was featured in the documentary Menendez and Menudo. boys betrayed, and described what he says happened.
José Menéndez me dijo, toma este vino. Después que yo me la tomé, yo me comencé a sentir un cansancio, un peso. Yo no podía reaccionar porque eso me estaba tomando cuenta de mi cuerpo. Me drogaron. Y después de eso, yo amanecí en el hotel.
Since their convictions in 1996, Lyle and Erik Menendez have filed appeals in state and federal court that have repeatedly been denied. Garagos is asking for the court to either vacate their sentences or to permit an evidentiary hearing so the brothers can offer proof concerning the allegations in this latest habeas motion.
Let's bring in our guest here in studio is crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Also joining us, criminal defense attorney Laura Yeretsian. Matt, let me start with you first, because this was almost 40 years ago, 1996. So 38 years ago, this conviction happened. They've been in jail since that time. Most cases like this, I would argue, go away. People forget about those individuals serving life sentences without parole. But this one, all of a sudden, has exploded. How did we even get here?
You know, I'd like to think of it as the fact that there's a resurgence in a look at this case, right? You know, this started in '89 when this first happened. There was the 2 trials brought by Court TV when we were a young network back then. And you had all of those people and eyes on the case. You had these 2 young, good-looking men from Beverly Hills, California as the defendants and wearing sweaters each and every day. And then talking about these unthinkable crimes. So now you have new generations looking at this case and the re-evaluating this trial and the evidence when you have these things like the Netflix documentary and then also the docudrama. Take a look.
Our life was one thing. And we decided we weren't going to take that anymore. Starting right now. Demand more out of life.
So, I mean, you have all of these new resurgence in the storyline. So you have new generations looking at the case. And this is what also led to the petitions and family members trying to get the release of these of the Menendez brothers, who were 18 and 21 consecutively when they were convicted in their second trial, where there was no cameras allowed and limited defense of sexual abuse.
You know what's interesting, Matt, is that a lot of people point to the O.J. Simpson trial as the beginning of this whole true crime sort of boom, but I've always said it was the Menendez brothers case because that was before O.J., one of the first trials to be televised. And I mean, it had everything, like you said, Matt. It had the rich and famous. It had really great personalities. Leslie Abramson, who was representing them in the first trial, really just an amazing attorney. And one of the things that's happened in recent years is that celebrities have sort of attached themselves or had interest in this case. Tell me about that.
Yeah, you know, you have celebrities that are producing true crime podcasts in themselves, and they're also behind the scenes of these docudramas and documentaries that we're watching, including this case in particular. There are a lot of celebrities that have been vested in this particular case, including Sunny Holston, who has talked about it on her talk show, saying that this really makes her think back to a lot of the cases that she prosecuted and whether or not sexual violence would have been a changing factor decades later. Then you have people like Kim Kardashian, who have been very outspoken. After the Netflix docudrama came out, she actually visited the Menendez brothers in prison. She said, posting on her social media feed, that they should be released. And then you had, of course, Rosie O'Donnell, who has been very outspoken about this. She's been speaking on Court TV about it as well. And she said this in her podcast.
I did not know Roy and didn't know the fact that he had been raped by my father and was another victim came out through a documentary investigation they were doing on the band separately from anything related to Erik and I.
Yeah, she spoke to our Vinnie Politan on closing arguments, and she said basically that she feels that it's time for them to be released. Just one of the big names that has been behind this movement to have them released, and that has led to what we might see today there in Los Angeles County.
All right, let's bring in Laura Resentencing for some analysis as well. It's actually been almost 28 years, almost 30 years, 28 years that they've been in jail. And I think that it's a very valid argument to be made, Laura, that today's environment would treat sexual abuse allegations differently. And the environment in which that exists now, it would be a mitigating factor. I do think it's true.
And I agree with you 100%. The society as a whole is less tolerant towards sexual abuse. When it comes to sexual abuse, it doesn't take much. Look at the cases that we've been seeing recently, all the sex trafficking cases that we've seen, all the sexual assault cases, starting with the Harvey Weinstein, then moving on to P. Diddy. Now we've got also Mike Jeffries. So there's this trend of huge focus on sexual crimes, sexual abuse, sexual assaults, people abusing their position of power to molest or sexually abuse people. So the society as a whole is a lot more educated, they're more aware, more alert, and a lot more sensitive to these issues. The time is ripe for a case like this, right? Especially if it's a retrial or a resentencing, depending on what the DA's office ends up doing in this case.
You know, Laura, there's been a lot of suggestion that if this evidence was allowed in a trial, let's say a retrial, things would be different now. Maybe there would be a manslaughter conviction as opposed to murder. But what I want to put out there is this idea that I think there's even the possibility of a complete acquittal, because what we're learning about this type of abuse is the way it affects the brain, the way you look at the world. And if they truly believe, they testified to this the first go-round, that their father told them if they told anyone about it, he was going to kill them. And they truly believe that he would kill them, and they acted in that way when they confronted him with this abuse. I think a jury would have been fine saying, look, we believe that you believe that your life was in danger, and it wasn't a wrong belief, which would have made it manslaughter, but we believe it might have been the right belief with all the knowledge we have now about, you know, domestic violence.
And who knows what a jury would have done, right? If this evidence had come in. We know at the first trial, it was a hung jury, which means it did impact that jury. Yes. Who knows what the next jury would have done, but unfortunately the next jury didn't really get to hear a lot of that evidence related to the sexual abuse. I mean, today we know a jury may acquit and may even nullify, even if they think it's an unreasonable belief, right? A wrong belief, they may just nullify, even though that's technically not legal, but anything could happen. In this environment of almost zero tolerance for sexual abuse, I wouldn't be surprised if they would be acquitted if this case is retried. Yes. So I agree with you.
And just a reminder that even if the DA recommends a resentencing and them getting out of jail, the judge obviously has to be in agreement with that and has to say, yes, that's what we're going to do in this case.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I do want to remind everyone about the seriousness of this crime.
Oh, gosh,
I think that's gotten lost as well. So
it's
we'll
pretty
talk about
heinous.
that. Yeah.
All right, up next, we are going to listen to testimony from the actual trial of the Menendez brothers. Stay tuned.
Tonight, on Closing Arguments, Sarah Boone prepares to learn her fate as the final witnesses take the stand. Court TV teams are live from Florida with the very latest in the suitcase murder trial.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV. The convicted murderer of the horrific honor killing.
What happened that night?
Speaks out for the first time on camera.
You make it sound like you're the victim here.
Exactly. Interview with a killer. Sunday, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Lyle and Erik would continue to be victimized. They would be victims of a system that wouldn't hear them. And they would be victims of a culture that was not ready to listen. They would be mocked. They would be called cold-blooded killers, left to rot in jail and denied any hope of redemption. If Lyle and Erik's case were heard today, with the understanding we now have about abuse and PTSD, there is no doubt in my mind that their sentencing would have been very different.
The This afternoon, Court TV is watching very closely developments out of California. Erik and Lyle Menendez will soon find out if they have a chance at being released from prison after being sentenced to life without parole in 1996 for brutally murdering their parents. This following a second trial.
Both brothers did testify that they killed their parents after suffering years of sexual abuse at their hands. While we wait for the Los Angeles DA to announce his decision on whether or not to recommend and allow the brothers to be resentenced, we want to take this chance to listen back to some emotional testimony from Erik and Lyle Menendez.
Why were you feeling guilty?
I was feeling guilty because I had, the 13-year-old conversation I had just sort of let go, and I never really followed up on it. I didn't really want to follow up on it. I was so happy it went that well with my dad, and I just kind of let it go. And he told me this, and I was kind of like, and he didn't say that, but I felt like, why didn't I do anything about it?
Like he was blaming you somehow?
Maybe. He wasn't, but I felt that way.
Were you blaming you?
Yes. And also feeling guilty when I asked him if he liked it. And
what did he do when you asked him if he liked it?
I was angry. What?
What did he do when you asked him if he liked it?
What did he do?
Yes.
He said, of course he didn't like it. And he just, I don't remember exact words, but he was crying. And I told him, I believed him. And I did believe him.
Why did you believe him? You didn't believe him at first.
Rephrase the question.
Did you believe him at first?
Not really. I wasn't sure. I just didn't. It was the shock of it. That was just my response.
What made you believe him?
Just the way he was talking about it. Just his tears and, it was obvious that it was true, and I just didn't feel my brother was going to, there was no reason to lie. Clearly he was coming to me, wanted me to do something about it, and it was true, because, my dad never denied it when I talked to him about it.
At some point, was your gun empty?
Yes.
And was there something about your mother that you learned then, either through Erik, or you saw something or heard something?
Could see sort of behind my dad, really barely, but could see somebody moving, seemed like moving in the direction of where my brother should be. And so I reloaded.
You reloaded? Is that yes?
Yes.
And what did you do after you reloaded?
I ran around and shot my mom.
Where did you shoot her?
I just reached over and I shot her close.
Was that the last shot that was fired? Is that yes?
Yes.
What else did she say Saturday night that was not part of this standard upset thing that she'd say?
She told me that if I would have kept my mouth shut, things might have worked out in the family.
What did you think that meant?
That meant that things had not worked out in the family, and I believed that she was going to kill us.
Well, things had not worked out in the family, and whose fault was that?
Mine, because I had told Lyle.
And keeping your mouth shut, what did you think she meant? Shut about what?
About the stuff between Dad and I, and that I had told Lyle.
And what did you think she meant by things not working out in the family. The family had had problems before, of one kind or another, like all families, hadn't it?
Usually there was a lot of argument in these when she would say there had not been anything. Since Thursday night, there had been no arguments on Friday, no arguments on Saturday, and suddenly she was coming up with this statement that the family was through, and I really thought I knew what that meant.
You said the family was through. Now, she didn't say the family's through or the family's over. She said, but for what you did, things would work out.
She said that things hadn't worked out.
And did you therefore interpret that to mean the family was over?
Yes.
And did you interpret that to mean that certain members of the family were not going to be alive?
Sustained.
How did you interpret that? What did you interpret that with respect to the various members of the family?
I thought they were going to kill Lyle and I.
At some point, Mr. Menendez, did the massages that you were doing on your father change?
Yes.
And was there an occasion when he asked you to do something new?
Yes.
And what was it? Would you tell us what it was that he asked you to do?
He took off his underwear, and he had never done that before. And he had me massage the front of him. And so I started. I massaged his calves and his thighs, and I skipped over his genitals because I didn't want to touch him, and I just went to his stomach, and he said no.
And did you understand what he meant?
Yes.
And what happened next?
I just touched him.
And did anything else happen after you touched his genitals?
Yes.
And did anything else happen?
Yes.
What happened?
I started to rub him, and then he told me to massage him with his mouth.
With his mouth?
My mouth.
And do you remember whether or not at that point your father had an erection?
Yes, he did.
And how did you feel about his asking you to massage him with your mouth?
I didn't want to do that because I had never seen him like that, and I didn't want to do it.
Did it frighten you?
Yes.
Did you therefore refuse, and that ended things?
No, I wanted this time to go on with my dad. I didn't want it to end, so I was going to do what he said. I just didn't want to do all things.
All right, that is a live shot of the gaggle of reporters waiting for the Los Angeles County District Attorney to take the podium and let us know what he plans to do regarding the Menendez brothers. That should be happening any moment now. It's supposed to begin at about 4:30, so we're expecting that to happen again in just moments. Let's bring back in our guest, crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson's with us, and criminal defense attorney Laura Yeretzian. And one of the things I wanted to do, Matt, was remind people of the seriousness of this crime. Tell our viewers how prosecutors really painted these brothers as bad guys and how serious this crime actually was back at the time.
I'm glad that you're doing that because, you know, they are cold-blooded, calculated killers. That's how they were portrayed in court in trial 1 and 2, and that's the facts here. I mean, they bought those weapons. They were doing robberies in the neighborhood of their friends, multi-million-dollar homes, and then they get the idea that they're gonna, you know, eliminate and execute their mom and dad. And they planned it out. They practiced with those guns, those shotguns. They shot them at close range, blew off their faces, their hands, and it was a very gruesome scene. And you heard right there in that testimony that was captured by Court TV in our first trial there of these brothers talking about that he reloaded his weapon. And then after that, they went to the movies for an alibi. They picked up not any of the shell casings, but then they came up with some sort of plan to call 911 and cry and act like they've just discovered all of this. There was I was doing this in self-defense at that point in time. This was very brutal, calculated, and then afterwards, they were trying to spend a lot of that money buying restaurants, going on shopping sprees, buying Porsches and Rolexes.
You know, Mark Garagos, his attorney, was just on that live shot as I was listening, Matt, to your really great description of the brutalness of this crime. I personally haven't decided if I've heard enough evidence to know if I believe them or not. But knowing that, Matt, there are a lot of family members supporting these two being resentenced, getting out of jail. But of course, there's some on the other side. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the LA County Courthouse right there that you're looking at, it was a sea of media just a couple days ago, about a week ago, when there was a news conference by Garagos that we brought to you live, and there was also 20 to 30 family members standing behind them and also family friends discussing why they wanted these brothers, these killers, convicted killers, released and how they have forgiven them, including Kitty Menendez's sister. Take a listen.
For many years, I struggled with terms with what happened to my sister's family. It was a nightmare none of us could have imagined. But as details of Lyle and Eric's abuse came to light, it became clear that their actions, while tragic, were the desperate response of two boys trying to survive the unspeakable cruelty of their father.
Now, one person who was not there was Kitty Menendez's brother. That is Milton Anderson. He has lawyered up and he's paying close attention to all of this. He believes that his nephews should not be released, and he also does not believe that there was sexual abuse in the household.
Let's bring in Lara Uretzi. And Lara, as we mentioned and as Matt explained, the original facts of this case were compelling. And remember, a jury did convict them. And some juries, the juries that they had in the first trial, heard about the abuse, and some of those folks were willing to convict, obviously, by the hung juries. But what do you think about the fact that they're being recommended for resentencing at this time, considering what we know about their actions both before, during, and after the original murders?
As far as the DA's decision is concerned, as far as resentencing, I think, look, in light of people's attitudes having changed, people understanding the impact that sexual abuse can have. I mean, as we were watching earlier, both Erik and Lyle testifying, you could see the impact and how emotional it was for them to talk about what had happened and what they'd gone through. I think this is the time, and if anything is going to happen, if the DA's office decides that, you know, based on the mitigating factors, even assuming that maybe they're guilty of the voluntary manslaughter, right, then this is the time to do the right thing.
All right, fair enough. And I just want to mention again, I started working at Court TV right when this trial was going on. And I remember that this abuse claim came up during or after the beginning of preparation for trial, which was interesting. He had Dr. Jerome Oziel as his therapist, never mentioned it, talked about the murder, but never mentioned it to the therapist. And Lyle was found to have tried to get some of his friends to lie about him having told them about abuse.
Wow,
so
there's so much to this case.
You know what I mean? There's a lot
to
behind this. Anyway, let's take a break, folks. Coming up, we are just minutes away from that presser where the Los Angeles DA is expected to announce his decision on whether to resentence or recommend a resentencing for the Menendez brothers. We'll be right back.
Turning now to California, where the district attorney is getting ready to announce his decision about whether or not to allow the Menendez brothers to be resentenced.
Erik and Lyle Menendez are currently serving a life sentence after they were found guilty in 1996 of murdering their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez.
During their trial, the brothers claimed that they were sexually abused by their father, and a letter from Erik to his cousin in the months before the murders appears to support that claim.
This decision also comes in the wake of the newly released Netflix show about the brothers, which has renewed public interest in the case.
All right, we want to go in. I'm watching the press conference. We want to show you live shots. It's not yet started. So as soon as it starts, I will rudely interrupt anyone so that we can get into the the press conference. Still with us, we do have our correspondent, Matt Johnson, and attorney Lara Uretzi. And Lara, let me just ask you, do you think that it's public pressure that is putting this district attorney in a position to make this decision, whichever way he decides?
I would hope not. I hope he's doing it because he thinks it's the right decision, whatever that decision may be. But of course, I mean, he's a DA, he's looking at a re-election. Elections are coming up very soon, and there may be some public pressure involved. But again, my hope is that he would make a decision based on what he believes is the right thing to do and is legally supported in a case like this.
Now, Laura, do you have any thoughts on this idea that we're looking at this case from a window of 2024 as opposed to when it happened in 1989? You go back, you look at these cases with new mores, new eyes. Do you have any issues with that at all as far as the justice system taking that approach?
No, justice is not something that's stationary and that never changes or moves. The societal mores and values and ways of looking at things change over time. And I don't think there's anything wrong to look at this case from the point of view of the current times. Why not? If there's nothing wrong with admitting that we were wrong 20, 30, 40 years ago in the way we addressed sexual abuse and the tolerance we had for some of these things. The society is a lot more sensitive now, and the right thing is to have a strong stance about sexual abuse. It's not right, it never should be, and it should not be tolerated, and I think it's the right thing to do. Like I said, justice is not always going to be the same. It changes with society, or the meaning and definition of it does.
Yeah, good points. Now, we've been watching, and that was one of the attorneys that just went back, kind of calling some other people. We're going to keep it on that live shot. Matt, let me ask you this, because if the district attorney does recommend resentencing, if the court does it and they are released, what might that look like once they get out of jail? I know they're both married, but what else?
Right, so part of the argument from Geragos, who we just saw walk in the back room there with some of the DA assistants when he was waving to them. But anyways, he was pushing for, the fact that they could have been, under today's standards, prosecuted under manslaughter, which would mean that their sentence, with the added enhances, they would be out already. So if they are in fact going to be resentenced, they could be released, and they have wives. They are both married, were married behind closed doors. I believe that's the sister who we were also just showing. And they, in fact, all the money, they would not be entitled to any of that money. They would have to get jobs, but they would be ideally living with their wives, and their wives might be there to speak on their behalf if this does go to a hearing.
Matt, also tell us a little bit about this petition itself. Again, it is actually a petition by the Los Angeles County District Attorney to have them be resentenced. The judge has to look at it. What was a part of that petition as far as we know? Yeah,
Kitty Menendez, who is Erik's wife, she's been circulating this along with Mark Geragos, and they're really just asking for people to take another look at the justice system, in particular in LA County where this all took place. Now, I will also add, I've been in this room many, many times, like I'm sure you have, Michael, and that is a very tiny room. And they would have called all the media members hours ago to go through security to wait and to be there right now. And then they save those additional seats in the front for family members.
Can I ask you this, Matt? So many people are going in and out. We've identified those that we know that are going in and out. Is this typical when you've been in this room waiting as media?
Well, it kind of depends on the nature of the press conference. If it's going to be an announcement of an arrest or charges, then it's going to be a little bit more on time. Something like this, it sounds like they have to get all their ducks in a row. Maybe they're changing his speech of what he's going to share. Maybe they're changing the rules. Maybe there might not be questions that are going to be taken by the media members. I think all of that's being hashed out right now, but you see Mark Geragos coming back out.
Yeah, there is Mark Geragos. Again, he's sort of representing the brothers during their appeal. Quickly, Laura, one of the things that Mark has said about this case is that if this were the Menendez sisters rather than the Menendez brothers, they either would be out of jail already or have never had gone to jail. Do you agree with that?
Maybe. It's possible. We do have a softer spot for abused women, and that's what the society is used to. The society is more used to seeing cases involving women who are abused, and those become focus of attention. And we talk less about when men or boys are abused. We just see them as more tough. I mean, it has to do with the way we approach. He may be right, he may be wrong. Look, it doesn't matter. Girls or boys or men or women, if you're abused, and especially if it's sexual abuse, I think society now sees it all as the same. They just won't tolerate it. And again, and we're going to see very soon what the DA is going to say. And my guess is that it's going to be positive for the Menendez brothers.
You know, Michael, something I wanted to talk to you about is they have been in jail for more than 30 years. Mm-hmm. Is that enough? And knowing the brutal nature in which they killed their parents, abuse or no abuse, is 30 years justice?
Well, it depends. If you're in line with the original decision by the jury, no, because they were life in prison without parole. But if you're in line with this thinking that with our new way of looking at PTSD, battered syndrome, or spouse syndrome, battered children syndrome, manslaughter conviction would have meant only 3 to 11 years or 15 years at most. So certainly it's been double that. So you can look at it that way as well. And as far as the kind of citizens they've been in jail, apparently there are a number of letters filed by folks in jail talking about the fact that they have been providing hospice help to sick inmates. They've been running Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, meditation groups for inmates. They've completed college courses. So certainly, they've been, exemplary prisoners while in prison.
Yep, it looks like it's starting. Let's go in. All right, we can't, it looks like they did make some type of announcement. We were not able to hear what that is. Oh, but we've been told what was said was this will be starting soon. Let's see, Matt, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about especially the Kim Kardashian, the Rosie O'Donnell podcast, the amount of attention that these two have gotten. And here's what amazes me in all of these things about these two individuals and the way they're described. And you see them in pictures while they're in jail. They're smiling. They do seem like they are good people, so to speak, if you look at the appearances and the way that they speak to the individuals that they interview with and have been interviewed by. Do you know any more about those pieces of that, what they've been talking about?
Well, I would imagine them to be very articulate, right? I mean, they went to the best schools, they had the best education until they became convicted killers on their own right. They admitted to that crime. And then Michael was talking about the exemplary nature and their leadership behind bars. They're behind bars in a maximum security prison outside of San Diego. They're in Donovan State Prison. And, that's not Club Med, what these kids were used to. And they've grown up in that system. And, they have, run programs like Alcoholics Anonymous and whatnot.
All right, we're going to take a very quick break so we can get right back in when this press conference begins.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
I thought he was okay.
The suitcase murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight, on Closing Arguments, Sarah Boone prepares to learn her fate as the final witnesses take the stand. Court TV teams are live from Florida with the very latest in the suitcase murder trial.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Michael Ayala here with Judge Ashley Wilcott. We are just standing by as we're waiting word, and you're actually looking at the press room at the Los Angeles County Courthouse, where we're waiting for word from the Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon on whether they will be resentencing. Actually, we got word that they are. They're going to recommend resentencing for the Menendez brothers. We just got word from the AP, Judge.
That's right. No, I was just going to say that the prosecutors are going to recommend that they be resentenced after 34 years behind bars. And of course, we've talked about then that would have to go before a court. A judge would have to say yes, okay. So let's bring in, still with us, correspondent Matt Johnson. We also have our guest attorney Laura Yeretsian. We're going to go back into that as soon as that press conference starts. And let's just talk about the reality of how these two must be feeling, Laura. You can't even imagine. They know this is going on. This is literally their opportunity to be free, the first step in that process. Laura, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Yes. And this must be unbelievable for the two brothers. I mean, can you imagine being in custody for years, maybe having even given up hope that they would ever come out, and suddenly society as a whole understands what they've been through, and a DA, an elected official, is willing to recommend resentencing. That's huge. I can't even imagine how elated they may be, because now there's a lifeline that's been thrown their way. I know that we still need to wait and see what a judge is going to do, but a recommendation by the DA is huge, and it's going to have a very impactful impact or influence on any judge, because the judge is going to take into consideration what the defense is saying and also what the especially what the prosecution is going to be saying in this case.
Yeah, and in their previous press conference, George Gascon said that he's done this about 300 times, and I think only 3 or 4 people have actually went back into prison, reoffended in any way. So they have had tremendous success with this. Quickly, Laura, what do you think this judge should be considering as this petition comes in front of him with a lot of the issues that we've talked about here today? What will he be considering, or she be considering about this case as to whether to affirm a recommendation for resentencing?
Basically everything that we've been hearing, a history of years of abuse, and that this should have been really this should have been a manslaughter, not a murder, and that had it been a manslaughter conviction, and had this trial been done in the right way, in other words, if the sexual abuse had come in, they would have been convicted of a voluntary manslaughter. These two brothers would have been out by now. And these are very impactful arguments. These are very important things for a judge to take into consideration. And again, we talked about this. Justice is a dynamic thing. And I would think that the judge would think that it would be just at this point, after 30 years of being behind bars, to release or resentence two brothers who've lived through horrific days with their parents, and no one should have to go through this. And as a society, do we understand why they would have done it if they truly went through this kind of abuse? I think most people would understand it.
All right, Matt, we've talked a little bit about the family members in support of them being resentenced, but I understand there are also family members who are not in support. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, you know, like we discussed before, not all the family members are on board with this, and they miss their loved ones, including Kitty Menendez and her brother. He's been outspoken about all of this and this process. He even lawyered up, and he wants to be in contact with the DA before making this decision, but he didn't agree with whether or not they should be resentenced or released. He wanted them to spend the rest of their time behind bars at Donovan State Prison.
And I understand part of what he said was he just wanted to be kept informed. He didn't want to hear things from the media, which I think a lot of family members can get very frustrated by.
Yeah, Laura, quickly, you know, victims have a lot of power in the system now. How much should the court take into account that there is a family member, the sister of one of the victims, who might have questions about them being released?
The court will listen to the victims. They have a right under the law to speak up, and for the court to listen to their concerns and take that into consideration. I mean, that's part of what we go through in every single criminal case, especially if somebody's has gone through trial and we're looking at sentencing. So it's important for the court to do that. But the court also has to weigh what some of the family members who are advocating for the two brothers are saying as well. So it's a balancing act, and it involves statements by the victims' family members, and also other factors that we've discussed throughout today's show.
Yeah. So just again, a recap, this is the press conference. It was going to start around 4:30, but we know obviously it hasn't. We've been showing you the live picture. Mark Garagos representing them on the appeal. He's been going in and out. Looks like members of the district attorney's office have been going in and out. And you can see the back of Kitty's head. That's who that is, correct, Matt? With the
sister, yes.
Yes. So there she is, the sister of Kitty. All right.
And as far as the delay is concerned, it could be anything. We don't know. It was scheduled to go at 4:30. We're standing by. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll get you in there as soon as it gets going. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala.
And I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. We have breaking news in the Menendez family murders. We're waiting for a news conference to begin with the Los Angeles County District Attorney, George Gascon.
Now, according to the Associated Press, he announced that Erik and Lyle Menendez, or he will announce, they should be resentenced for the murders of their parents back in 1989.
Erik and Lyle Menendez were convicted of March of 1996 and sentenced to life in prison for killing their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. Just earlier this month, the district attorney announced his office was revisiting the case after newly discovered evidence indicating that the boys had in fact been sexually abused by their father. Last year, their attorneys asked the court to reconsider the conviction and sentence after a former member of the boy band Menudo came forward claiming Jose Menendez sexually assaulted him in the 1980s.
The attorneys also presented a letter that Erik wrote to a cousin months before the killings, talking about he was being sexually abused by his father. That cousin has since passed away. Now, the brothers' first trials ended in a mistrial after the juries were deadlocked. Remember, they both had separate juries that first time around. Now, a second trial, they were found guilty of first-degree murder. They were tried together that second time when much of the defense's evidence about sexual abuse was actually excluded from the jury scene.
Now, Michael, I have to ask you about that because the reality is they were tried separately initially and then together, and so, or vice versa. Does that make a difference? Do you think that they were then tried together at that second trial affected the outcome?
Yeah, I think it did. I think seeing them as two people acting in concert and having that sort of in your face every day, I think absolutely had an effect on the trial.
I think so too. I think it wasn't just the, the other reality of it. All right, there's the live picture that we can see up. Again, this is the press conference. It was scheduled to begin about 4:30 p.m. And we've seen people going in and out right now. Everybody's kind of seated quietly, but Mark Garagos, the appellate attorney for the boys, has gone in and out. We've seen some other individuals who look like they may work for one of those offices. They've gone in and out. And Michael, now we're just waiting for the district attorney to make an appearance.
Yeah, again, this was scheduled to begin 4:30. We have no idea. It could be any number of things. Why the delay? They could be waiting for some information, piece of paper. They could be waiting for someone to show up at this particular press conference. There's no way of knowing, but we have been assured, or was assured earlier by someone in the press office that it would, take about 10 minutes or so. It's been a little bit more than that already, but at the end of the day, we'll get this going and get you out there as soon as it begins. Let's bring in our guest joining us this hour to discuss his litigation trial attorney, Rich Schoenstein. Rich, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Just love to get your thoughts on these developments. I know the whole thing started with the sort of reintroduction of the Menendez brothers through these, these properties, this monster show on Netflix, a documentary as well. They were against it. They thought it portrayed them in a very bad light, but ultimately it seems going to have a positive effect.
Absolutely. Hooray for the media. Hooray for social media. This started out, I think, as one of the first big cases ever on court TV. It was televised back at the time, at least the original case was, and it attracted an interest. Everyone was fascinated in this case and has remained so. And the recent developments, the stuff on Netflix and podcasts, has led to a renewed interest and is probably the reason that we're here today watching a press conference where their sentence might be reconsidered. I mean, it's amazing. Great job by the media and social media.
I agree, media, social media, but also with us is our own correspondent, Matt Johnson, and you've been looking in, doing deep dives into this case. Talk to us about the celebrities and who has spoken out, because I think in today's world, that goes a long way.
Right, okay, so you have a lot of followers with these particular celebrities, including Kim Kardashian, who visited with the Menendez brothers, shortly after some of those Netflix shows had come out, and she heard firsthand from them that they were not happy about it at that point in time. They felt that they were painted in a bad light, but they're convicted killers. But she did say that they should be released and that they have been reformed, and she doesn't believe that they should stay life behind bars without the possibility of parole in Donovan State Prison, where they are sentenced just outside of Los Angeles in the San Diego area. But I mean, you also had Rosie O'Donnell, who was beating the drum on this one. She has been very active in the true crime world. She's been on Court TV many times, visiting with Vinnie Politan about this particular case. And then you had even the actors that were portraying these brothers in the Netflix docudrama. They've also been outspoken and gotten their followers to help sign this petition to get this case reevaluated by the DA's office.
Let's bring back in our guest as well. Joining us this hour, again, is criminal defense attorney Lara Yaretsi. And Lara, thank you for sticking around with us as we await word coming out of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, again, what this court needs to consider. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that I've been waiting for is for someone to say that we've authenticated the letter, which there's still some question as to this newly found evidence, just how authentic it is, and also the claims by the former Menudo member, whether those claims are legit. Those haven't really been sort of found to be actually factual at this point. Is that something the court will take time to look at?
It's very possible that the court will take time to look into that, but I'm sure the DA's office has done its own investigation. They've got their own investigators, and they may have tried or made efforts to authenticate them, or they may have talked to witnesses and figured out how these items, at least the letter was found, and why it took so long, and also followed up with some of the other allegations of abuse by someone else who had been also abused. So just because it wasn't fully authenticated doesn't mean that the court is not going to consider it. The court will give it the weight it deserves, basically. And I'm sure it's going to give it some heavy weight because it supports what the brothers were claiming throughout their 2 trials.
You know, one thing I'd like to do right now for our viewers who may not have watched the documentary is there's a Netflix documentary, and there was an interview with the brothers in which they're discussing a letter that Lyle had received from his brother Erik. Let's listen to that together.
Lyle wrote me this emotional letter when I was in the county jail. Lyle couldn't express what he did in that letter in person. It was easier for him to put it on paper. He felt that telling the 6 secrets of the family would be like killing my parents again. And he did not want to do it.
Ultimately, it became clear, particularly after they found that jail letter, and there was no way around saying what happened. Because they had that note, they had a confession that we were responsible for my parents' death.
I was supposed to destroy that letter, but it was a precious letter to me. It was one of those moments where Lyle was really expressing his own pain. And I didn't want to just throw it away because that didn't happen often between us.
2 weeks later, the sheriff's department quietly put out a statement, "Gee, sorry, Erik and Lyle never tried to escape. My bad."
As a result of them finding this letter in the summer of 1990, we now had to confess to everyone.
Rich, powerful words, and it's the voices of the brothers in these interviews from the jailhouse that were in the Netflix documentary. How much do you think that plays in to a decision to resentence and the public paying attention? Because you actually hear in their own voice decades since anybody had heard them speaking about this.
I think their voices are important, but I think our whole perspective has changed. Forget about the evidence for a minute. The way we look at sexual abuse and abuse that happens in a family is so fundamentally different than it was in 1996. This attention is a positive outgrowth of the Me Too movement. This is about that us taking these kind of allegations seriously. People were joking about the brothers' claims back in the 1990s, and now they're being considered, and it's about time.
Yeah, we just are looking right now. You see a lot of people coming in. Our viewers along with us can see this is a live shot, and it looks like there's Mark Garagos right there representing both of the brothers on appeal. Some other individuals. Let me turn it over to Michael and Matt if you recognize any of the other individuals.
Yeah, some of them are family members that we saw at that press conference, right, Michael?
Yes, absolutely, and I think that's George Gascon coming in as well, so we can expect that announcement coming up in a second. He's taking a second to stop by and say hello to family members as well. Again, remember, most family members, including the two you see sitting there, both support a decision of resentencing these young men. So actually, they're not young men anymore, both either in their early 60s or late 50s. Let's go in now as they are set to begin.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. And before I begin speaking, I want to also introduce some other people that are here with me, and I hope I'm pronouncing the names right because I've been here already part of it. But I have Ana Maria Duran, Jose Menendez, Jose Menendez, and Miss Karen Vandermolen, and Kitty's niece. They're all here with us. Also with us here is Brock Lunsford. He's the Assistant Head Deputy for the Post-Litigation Conviction Unit. And Nancy Cervier, who is the Deputy District Attorney in charge of the Resentencing Unit. Let me begin by telling you that this is a case where we've had many people in this office spend a great deal of time reviewing the case. I have to tell you unequivocally that we don't have a universal agreement. There are people in the office that strongly believe that the Menendez brothers should stay in prison the rest of their life, and they do not believe that they were molested. And there are people in the office that strongly believe that they should be released immediately and that they were in fact molested. I have to tell you that after very careful review of all the arguments that were made for people on both sides of this equation, I came to a place where I believe that under the law, resentencing is appropriate, and I am going to recommend that to a court tomorrow. What that means in this particular case is that we're going to recommend to the court that the life without the possibility of parole be removed and that they would be sentenced for murder, which, because there are two murders involved, that would be 50 years to life. However, because of their age, under the law, since they were under 26 years of age at the time that these crimes occurred, they would be eligible for parole immediately. The teams that have worked on this, on the resentencing side of it, have spent literally probably hundreds of hours by now looking at this case. These cases were originally presented on the habeas side of it, which I'll explain in a moment what that is, last year, and then the request for a prosecutor-initiated resentencing occurred earlier this year. And there have been people in this office working in these cases from the very beginning, as well as many other cases that we have. The reason why I'm here today and why I came in front of all of you about 10 days ago is because there was a more recent documentary about the case that again brought a tremendous amount of public attention. And we know there have been other documentaries, so this is not the first, this is the more recent one. And frankly, our office got flooded with requests for information. And even though this case was already scheduled to be heard in late November, I decided to move this forward because, quite frankly, we did not have enough resources to handle all the requests. And one of the things that I thrive to do in this office is to be very transparent in everything that we do. In this case, we review the prison files. And you have to understand that the way the process works, when you're talking about a resentencing under the law, it really focuses not necessarily and what the original crimes were, but it focuses on, has the person been rehabilitated, number one, and number two, can they be released safely into the community? Under that rubric, since I've been in office, we have resentenced over 300 people, including 28 for murder. Only 4 have reoffended. If that was a regular recidivism rate in this country, we would be the safest nation in the world, but we know that it's not. In fact, somewhere between 40 and 50% of the people that go to prison reoffend and get rearrested. And that's why we have so many problems. However, when you look at the case of the Menendez brothers, you see 2 very young people, one was 19 and the other one was 21, when they committed these horrible acts. And I want to underline, they were horrible acts. There is no excuse for murder, and I will never imply that what we're doing here is to excuse that behavior, because even if you get abused, the right path is to call the police, seek help. But I understand also how sometimes people get desperate. We often see women, for instance, that have been battered for years, and sometimes they will murder their abuser out of desperation. And I do believe that the brothers were subjected to a tremendous amount of dysfunction in the home and molestation. But they went to prison for life without the possibility of parole, which meant that certainly under the law at that time, they had no hopes of ever getting out. They could have done what many other people do, which is basically said, you know what, I'm here for the rest of my life, so I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to misbehave, I'm going to join gangs, I'm going to live the life of the person. But they never did that. To the contrary, even though they didn't think that they would ever be left free, they engaged in a different journey. A journey of redemption and a journey of rehabilitation. And often the people that begin their journey of rehabilitation and redemption in prison is often very internal. And what they do, and one of our lawyers pointed out this today, is usually the path is people try to further their education, do things for self-improvement, which the brothers have done, by the way. But it's more unique or less usual, I guess, when people not only do that, but they also begin to engage in ways to make life for others better. And in this case, the brothers have been doing so for a very long time, creating groups to deal with how to address untreated trauma, creating groups to deal with other inmates that have physical disabilities and may be treated differently. Even in one case, Lyle negotiating for other inmates as to the conditions that they live under during prison. And all this was done by 2 young people, now they're not as young, they had no hopes of ever getting out of prison. They have been in prison for nearly 35 years. I believe that they have paid their debt to society, and the system provides a vehicle for their case to be reviewed by a parole board, and if the parole concurs with my assessment, and it will be their decision, they will be released accordingly. I must underline, however, this case will be filed in court tomorrow. The final decision will be made by the judge. Court has to agree with my conclusion that they deserve to be resentenced. It is very possible that there may be members of this office that will be present in court opposing the resentencing. And they have a right to do so. And we encourage those that disagree with us to speak, and the court is the appropriate place to do it. We certainly feel we're very sure not only that the brothers have rehabilitated and that they will be safe to be reintegrated in our society, but that they have paid their dues, not only for the crimes that they committed, but because of all the other things they have done to improve the life of so many others. So, again, we will be filing for resentencing tomorrow. We're seeking that they would be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, as opposed to life without the possibility of parole, which is they currently have. That means that they would have 50 years to life because there were 2 murders. But because of the age upon which they were convicted, under 26, under current law, that means they're eligible for youthful parole. I think there is also important to have some introspection today, because I think that often, for cultural reasons, we don't believe victims of sexual assault, whether they're women, whether they're men. We saw in our first trial, which, by the way, they were tried twice. The first trial hung, meaning the jury could not come to a conclusion, and in fact, about half of the jury wanted to convict them of manslaughter, which, if that were have been the case, they would have been off prison a long time ago. And then there was a second trial, and then they were convicted of murder with special circumstances, which led to the life without the possibility of parole. But it's salient to understand that our own implicit and sometimes explicit bias around sexual abuse and sexual assault often leads us to severe injustices in our community. And I want to speak to those that are victims of sexual assault now, whether you're a man or a woman. Know that we're here for you. If you're a victim of sexual assault in this community, and by that we're talking about LA County, not just LA City, you can come for help. Whether you're prepared to prosecute or not, we will be here for you. We have services for you. And if you're prepared to move forward with the prosecution, we will evaluate it as we do any other case. And if we believe that the evidence is there to present a credible case in front of a jury that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, we would proceed accordingly. You do not have to suffer alone. You don't have to keep it to yourself. And help is here unconditionally. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish because I know there's tremendous amount of interest from the Spanish media, and I know that there are going to be other speakers today, and then we're going to open it up for questions.
All right, so there you heard it. George Gascon, the district attorney for LA County, saying they are going to recommend resentencing for Erik and Lyle Menendez. The most important thing that I heard from him is that essentially they are not looking at the crime. He acknowledged the crime, which I think is important, and the heinousness of it, but they're looking strictly for resentencing at the idea of whether they have been rehabilitated and if they can be released safely into the community, both of which he thinks is yes. And also, he thinks that they were, in fact, victims of dysfunction and molestation, and they have served their debt to society.
But when you say we, the thing that stood out to me is he admits his office is split. There are people, he said, from his office, and they have a right to do this according to him, who may oppose the resentencing in court. This is unusual. This is significant. He is the district attorney, but admitting my office is split. Some think they should never get out of jail. And I want to add to that, there was public pressure because he admitted the amount of calls he got, et cetera, they just cannot handle. Let's bring in also Matt Johnson, still with us here on set. Matt, how do you react to what he just had to say as the district attorney recommending resentencing?
You both hit the nail on the head, and I had that written down, and I also had public pressure, journalism, and the documentary that led to him even moving up his own date of a hearing in front of a judge on this matter. And he's kind of like preconditioned it, saying we have had a team of people looking at this matter of resentencing hundreds of hours and looking at whether or not they have been reformed behind bars. But I thought that the public pressure part and him trying to say that that's under the law of transparency that he's trying to portray is the reason why he led to this emergency press conference today with this announcement.
All right, let's bring in our guest, still with us, Laura Uretzian and also Rich Schoenstein. Rich, I'll start with you. Want to get your reaction to what we just heard out there in Los Angeles.
Michael, I sort of noted the same thing you did. He was very focused on rehabilitation, really no new mention at all of new evidence. And I wonder if his office thinks the new evidence might not be sufficient alone to merit resentencing. So he really focused on how these two have rehabilitated, have done acts of kindness, acts of good for others, have changed their lives, and can get back out into society safely. And then at the end, about how these allegations of abuse are treated more seriously now than they were back in the day, which is important, but not at all focused on the new evidence.
Laura, let's talk about a little bit of the legalities, because he did start all of this by saying, under the law, I believe resentencing is appropriate. And then he said the two questions, the rehabilitation and can they be released safely back into society. But the other thing he said is he is recommending to resentence to 2 counts of murder, not manslaughter. So I think some of the legalities that he's relying on really set the stage for the reasons for his decision.
Correct. I mean, I wasn't sure how he was going to what he was going to say as far as the counts. So now it's pretty clear what they're doing is they're basically trying to get rid of the possibility of life without possibility of parole. Now they can go, if the judge, of course, resentences them, they will have the opportunity to immediately go before a parole board and request that they be released. And we know that parole boards, as he also mentioned, the judge is going to be considering, will look at reformation. And if these people rehabilitated himself, and he kept on referring to this journey of redemption and rehabilitation and taking it a step further to the journey of actually helping others, not just themselves, right? So yes, and he was focusing on what the law allows it. Look, in this case, the DA had to make the recommendation, right? The defense can't just get the resentencing done in a case like this. They had to agree, they had to recommend it for the court to take it into consideration, or the court could have just done it itself on its own. And he's basically saying, look, I'm following the law. Yes, there was some public pressure. Yes, there were all these, the documentary and everything that was going on, but under the law, based on what we've discovered in hundreds of hours of looking into this case, we think these 2 young men at the time that this happened deserve to be released.
All right, so our understanding is that Mr. Garzón is still expressing himself in Spanish, addressing the Spanish media. So what we're going to do here, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, as soon as he begins to take questions, we'll take it back out there live. So we'll take a break. Let's keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We are continuing our breaking news coverage in the Menendez brothers murder case. The Los Angeles County District Attorney just announced Erik and Lyle Menendez should be resentenced for the murders of their parents.
That is the recommendation of the district attorney. The news conference is continuing. We want to go back in right now. Jose Menendez is speaking. His niece.
Good afternoon. My name is Ana Maria Baralt, and I'm the niece of Jose Menendez. Erik and Menendez are my cousins. I would also like to acknowledge the other family members here, some standing, some seated. Joan Vandermolen is here, Kitty's sister, as well as Diane Vandermolen Hernandez, Kitty's niece. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Today is a day filled with hope for our family. We are here because District Attorney Gascon has taken a brave and necessary step forward by recommending a resentencing for Lyle and Erik. The DA's decision reflects the truth that is hidden for so long, and I am grateful for his leadership in making this choice. We stand united in our hope and gratitude. Together, we can make sure that Erik and Lyle receive the justice they deserve and finally come home. Thank you to District Attorney George Gascon for his courage and leadership. This step gives us all hope that the truth will finally be heard and that Lyle and Erik can begin to heal from the trauma of their past. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
I believe Jose Menendez is going to say a few words.
This is the niece of Kitty Menendez,
I'm sorry.
Joan Vandermolen.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for coming. We are here today because District Attorney Gascon has taken a brave and compassionate step forward by recommending resentencing for my cousins, Erik and Lyle. And we wish to offer our deepest gratitude to DA Gascon. This decision is not just a legal matter. It is a recognition of the abuse my cousins endured, and we are grateful for the DA's leadership in putting justice over politics. We know this wasn't an easy decision, but is the right one. This is about truth, justice, and healing. It is time for Lyle and Erik to come home. And I ask all of you to join us in this fight for justice. We stand united in our hope and in our gratitude. Together we can make sure that Erik and Lyle receive the justice they deserve and finally come home. Thank you again to District Attorney George Gascon for his courage and leadership. This step gives us all hope that truth will finally be heard and Erik and Lyle can begin to heal from the horrors of their past. We hope this will also shed light and increase awareness and help others who have been victimized by sexual violence. Thank you all so much for being here today. We are grateful for everyone's support.
Is there anyone else speaking?
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay, and I apologize. I'm reading notes here and I'm trying to understand all the notes. Yes, ma'am.
So you go tomorrow, you file a case for resentencing. Then what happens after? Are the brothers going to be there tomorrow? And when is the role of the parole board going to come in?
Right, and you know what? I'm going to actually have the people that are handling the case walk you through all of it. The brothers will not be there tomorrow. The role of parole board comes later. But Nancy, why don't you walk everybody through?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you want to do?
So what we'll do is we'll file our...
Say your name, ma'am, your name and your title.
My name is Nancy Theberge. I'm the deputy in charge of the resentencing unit. This is Brock Lunsford, assistant head deputy of the post-conviction litigation division. So what will happen is tomorrow we will file the actual petition requesting resentencing with the legal arguments and accompanying exhibits as to why we think it's appropriate. It's just a filing. No one's going to physically be in the courtroom. From there, we'll also serve the defense with our motion and our paperwork so that they'll have their copies. And from there, we will coordinate with the defense to set up a court date with the court so that the petition can be heard. Now, whether or not that's a setting or a hearing will be decided between us and the defense and the court once everybody gets an idea of what we've filed. Then from there at the hearing, the defense can either decide to have the defendants, the Menendez brothers, physically brought into court. They can ask that the individuals appear by video or audio WebEx, kind of a Zoom participation, which we all kind of adapted to because of COVID. And then from there, we will do the hearing and submit all the written and legal and oral arguments and any evidence that needs to be admitted at the time, and then the court will rule at that point. But we don't have that court date yet because we're just starting the process tomorrow. But it's our intention to have that go forward before the habeas, because if the judge grants it, that may impact the defense's decision to proceed on the habeas. So we're gonna try it just as a matter of economy of time to stack it one before the other.
Now, have the brothers found out about this in real time, or were they told about this beforehand, or what was their reaction? If they
No, this was...
No, this is, actually, the family was only invited to come. They were not aware what the final decision was until a few minutes ago. The brothers may be actually seeing you guys on TV or social media, but no one knew other than a very small number of people in this office. And by the way, I should tell you that actually the final decision was just made about an hour ago. Right, then it goes back to the prison system, and then the parole system takes over that. That's correct.
Would there be a parole or probationary period? Would they have to live in a halfway house, or simply be released if they're allowed to be released?
You know, those are really completely entirely up to the parole board. Please, we'll try.
What was the factor that made the final decision? You said the final decision was just made. Was it the letter? Was it the Menudo confession? What was it that put you over the top to make?
No, what it was is I was evaluating the arguments that were being made within my office, both pro and against the release.
DA, can I ask you?
Hold on, I had it.
Calls from people that left.
I'm, you have made resentencing a cornerstone of your tenure as district attorney here in Los Angeles. There are some people who have accused you of using this very, very highly publicized, clearly case to use it for politics, given how close we are to the election. What's your response to people who have been making that claim?
There's nothing political about this. We have resentenced over 300 people, including 28 for murder. And we will continue to resentence people in the future. And that's all I can tell you.
But DA, question.
Yes, sir. Excuse me, please. You're interrupting.
Everyone's interrupting. I'm just wondering how your bid for re-election.
Yes, please. Yes.
Could the brothers be home by Thanksgiving?
I don't know the answer to that.
Why did you decide not to go with the reduced voluntary manslaughter?
That was part of the process that I was still going through up until a couple hours ago. I don't believe that a manslaughter would have been the appropriate charge given the premeditation that was involved in the murders. I believe that these were clearly murders that were premeditated. Now, the motivation, that's where, differences of opinion come up, but I don't think it would be appropriate to go all the way down to manslaughter.
DA,
yes, ma'am.
has your bid for re-election impacted?
Would you please stop? I am not going to talk about re-election, okay?
Okay. So
if you want to talk to re-election, go outside. We'll talk later. Please.
Relax.
It's a fair question.
No, it's not.
It is a
I'm sorry, you're interrupting, sir.
Be respectful.
Please.
A little heated there in that conversation, not discussing re-election, but again, an important distinction he made that he felt that, this is murder based on the crimes, not manslaughter. We need to take a break. When we come back, of course, we'll get you back inside to hear more from this press conference.
Tell me, Mr. Saeed, in your own words, what happened that night?
On the next interview with a killer, the convicted murderer of the horrific honor killings.
Did you kill your daughters to shut them up?
Very funny, really. I'm laughing. Do you see me? I laugh.
Speaks out for the first time on camera.
You make it sound like you're the victim.
Exactly.
Interview with a Killer. Sunday, 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
All right, folks, welcome back. I want to get you right back to that news conference out there in California where we have just learned the Los Angeles County District Attorney has recommended Erik and Lyle Menendez be resentenced for the murders of their parents.
Just giving
yes.
you a timeline. If you are no longer in office, what happens to this case? Could a potential successor undo what you're about to file?
I don't think so. Once it's filed, it's filed. It's up to the court to take it from there.
You mentioned...
Yes, I'm sorry.
In a parole situation, obviously you have a policy outside of the DA, so since you're obviously supporting the push for release here, how would that work? Would people from post-litigation, the sentencing big donors from parole go to argue for their release?
No. We have a policy that we only send victim services advocate if the victim or the victim's family wants that support. We don't send lawyers to our parole boards to relitigate a case. The parole board is fully aware of what the initial crime was, the crime that led to the conviction. Their work is primarily to evaluate whether they're rehabilitated and safe to be released, and that will be the way here.
Can you break down the timeline for us? Can we expect a hearing by the end of the year? Do you know when we might
Nancy, we don't.
I'm hoping to get it on calendar, depending on the defense preparedness. I'd like to see it go to hearing probably within the next 30 to 45 days at the most. There's not much to argue because we're kind of a collective.
Okay. There's one more question, please, but related to the case, not to elections. If you want to talk about elections, we'll do that. Yes, sir.
What would you like to say right now to Erik and Lyle Menendez?
What we like to say to them, and it's we, because it's not a, I've made the final decision, obviously, but we have a whole team that worked on it. We have a family here that wants to be reunited, is that we appreciate what they did while they were in prison. While I disapprove of the way they handle their abuse, we hope that they not only have learned, which appears that they have, but that if they get reintegrated into our community, that they continue to do public good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, you just heard that they did say they're expecting a hearing within the next 30 to 45 days. Tomorrow is just the first step. They have to file that petition, and then there'll be the involvement of the court, the parole board. Let's bring back in experts to help us break all this down. Litigation trial attorney Rich Schoenstein and criminal defense attorney Laura Yeretsian. All right, Matt Johnson's still with us in studio as well. Laura, weigh in. The public pressure was part of this decision, but at the end of the day, it's the beginning of the process. This isn't necessarily a hands-down win for the defense, so to speak.
I think it's a huge win for the defense. Look, under the law in California, the defense can't initiate this resentencing process. It has to be initiated by either the DA's office or the court on its own motion decides to resentence somebody. So I think it's a huge win for the defense because at this point, they're eligible for parole, and you've got a DA who's saying we believe that they should be released. His position is that they should be released at this point. They paid their debt to society, and now we've got a court that's going to make a decision on this, and the court has to take into consideration several things under the law, under California law, and one of which is their record of rehabilitation, any disciplinary record they may have, public safety, whether releasing them would cause any safety issues to the public. The court would also have to consider any psychological or physical or childhood abuse or trauma, including sexual violence, which we have in this case. And the court would have to also consider whether, since the original sentencing, there have been some changes in circumstances that would require resentencing in a case like this in the interest of justice. So is this going to be in the interest of justice? I think we can get a yes on most of this. That they've obviously been model exemplary inmates, and that's the largest part of the analysis here. And everything else, we've got the childhood trauma angle of it. We have it all. I expect the court to probably side with the DA's office and the defense in this case.
Can I just add, Michael, real quickly, that Matt Johnson shared with us earlier that there are letters attached from individuals who work at the correctional facility saying, yeah, they've done all these great things. So I do agree with you. They are absolutely role models in the jail system.
Yeah, they've been rehabilitated, but one of the things that, Rich, the judge will have to consider is also the dissenting voices in the DA's office. I still think that's a concern, that there was this split. Now, the DA has the final word, but the fact that there was a split, how do you read that, Rich?
Well, I'm not surprised by that because I think this is a divisive case, and I think the DA got in front of it by acknowledging right off the bat that there are people in his own office who think they should stay in jail for the rest of their lives, and there's going to be significant opposition to this petition for resentencing. I mean, what does life without parole mean if you can just get the sentence changed 30 years later? And the other question I would ask is, I know there's a very strong evidence about abuse by the father. They also murdered their mother. And I don't understand any allegations here that the mother was abusing them, and that might be a focus of some opposition as well. So I think this is a big step forward that the DA has taken this position, but they're not out of the woods yet. They still got to deal with the court.
And I know the allegation anyways is that the mother knew but did not protect them, right? And so she didn't do anything about the fact the abuse was at the hands of the father. Matt Johnson, weigh in as you're watching this press conference and you're listening to these relatives thank the district attorney and support them getting out of jail and starting their life.
But you also have the family that is split. So I'm wondering if at that parole board hearing, which is going to be a panel there in California, if it makes it to that point, after this goes through the judge's decision, if they should be resentenced, I wonder if there's going to be those family members that don't want them back in society, don't want them released from Donovan State Prison where they're being held right now, and they've been exemplary. You know, what they're trying to do is not have this retried as a manslaughter case. They're trying to go under California law with the fact that they were convicted for the crimes that they committed when they were 18 and 21 years old back there in '89, and they're going under the youthful parole standard, which is very similar to the elderly earlier release program that they have in California once you reach a certain age. Who was recently released under that was Leslie Van Houten, one of the Manson followers, convicted of murder and other things. So that was also a divisive case. You know, I know Deborah Tate very well. I know that she spoke at those parole board hearings, speaking on behalf of her sister and the other victims each and every time. But at one point, you know, they let her out back into society, and we could see that with this case.
Oh, great points.
Quickly, Larry Resentencing, why not let the habeas process play out and see if a retrial would be the right way to go? Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about the change in mores, who better than a jury to determine if what they find out about these two brothers and the abuse would have required them to be convicted of something else or have a different sentence?
Well, the habeas could take a long time, and they may end up having an evidentiary hearing depending on what the appellate courts ask in that case. That's a long process. It could take years. And why not take advantage of a law that allows a DA to recommend the resentence and get this done quickly? I think that the habeas doesn't stop. It continues. It's going to move forward, obviously, until they are released on, if they are released on, until that point where they're in front of a parole board and if they're released. But the bottom line, why give up on a great opportunity like this?